All right, Otis.
Welcome to another edition of Interruptions. Today, my next guest was drafted in 1987 in the 10th round by the Pittsburgh Steelers. He also went on to become a famous and brilliant broadcaster. I'm talking no other than Merril Hoge. How you doing today?
Otis, I'm great, brother. I just got to share how brilliant you are that you can swap from one Zoom to the other and get me on here as quick as you did.
I appreciate it. Now, you know what? Now I feel like the set is complete. There's no way I could have Ron Jaworski on and not have you. That's just not.
Okay, well, my boy Jaws has already set the table. I love it.
That's at the table. So my first question for you today is, you were drafted in '87 in the 10th round, and of course, today that would be considered, undrafted free agent. And so
Right.
when you were drafted and coming into the Pittsburgh Steelers, what kind of mindset does one have to take on, being such a late draft pick and trying to fight for a roster at that running back position?
Well, I think there was a bunch of things that happened to me initially. The guy who the scout in my area who
Hmm.
had come back after the combine and worked me out. He's actually the guy who called me on the phone.
Okay.
And he told me on the phone, he's like, "Hey, listen, you can make this team." He goes, "We need somebody like you." And that gave me a sense of hope. Now, that being said, I don't know that anybody probably gets called and go, "Hey, listen, you're probably not going to make the team, but we're drafting you." So,
Right.
but he shared some things with me that did make sense. They needed a guy and confirmed it when I got there. They were looking for a guy who could do it all. Who could run, block, and catch. And when I got there, they were lacking that. There was a lot of guys that could catch the ball, had great runners, guys that could block, but nobody did it all. Um, so I felt like that would be my advantage is if I could put all three on display. And
Okay.
that was back in a time where you were not limited to how many players you could have at training camp. I remember the Dallas
Okay.
Cowboys, they'd have a couple, they'd have over 100.
Okay.
So we would have when I got there, we had 10, 12 running backs
Wow.
in the room, and we were all going to keep. They were going to keep five.
Whoo.
So, um, from anyway. So that being said, when I walked in that room and I started to practice, I started to go through mini camp.
Hmm.
I realized what I was going to have to do in order to make a roster spot. I was going to have to put all three on display,
Okay.
and I was going to have to be better at everybody individually in those areas. And one thing they keep harping on, it's still consistent today as
Hmm.
it was then. Um, you cannot make mental errors. They'll allow one. Especially if you're
Okay.
a new guy, they won't allow two. And I saw that. You guys would make a mistake and you were gone the second time. So
Wow.
I made sure that I was a student of the game and I was prepared. And I can tell you, in my career, I can only think of two times in nearly 10 years that
Hmm.
I made. One time I made a mistake. I didn't realize I'd made the mistake, to be honest with you. And
Okay.
then only one time in my career did I leave the huddle not knowing what I was doing. That's a whole nother story. But I have no idea. When they called the play, I just went completely blank. I was like, I had to ask our quarterback, like Bub. I was like, "Hey, where do I line up?" Like, what do I? I didn't even ask him what I do. I just asked him where I lined up because I didn't even know where I lined up because we had never called this play for years. Anyway,
Okay. Okay.
so anyway, not to get long winded there. It's
No,
just
you're fine.
I knew that was going to be the area. And I'll share one other thing that gave me
Sure.
hope
Okay.
is Chuck Knoll.
Yeah.
We initially did a mini combine when we first got to training camp,
Uh-huh.
and he didn't want to do it. And this is where I actually got the perspective that the combine is an athletic event,
Right.
and then you play football.
Right.
And there couldn't be any more truth to that. And he said he didn't want to do it, but really, Mr. Rooney talked to him and it really suggested he do it. So he found a way to
Right.
kind of to do it, even though he didn't want to waste time on it. But
Okay.
after he got done, we got done doing that one day. Here's what he was mad at. He didn't want to waste a chance to practice football
Right.
and do some stupid athletic event that they'd already done in the combine.
Combine. Right.
Right. So he basically he lined up after that. He came to our meeting after that day, and he said, "Hey, listen, we found out who's the fastest, who jumps the highest, who is the best athlete." He goes, "Now I got 5 weeks to find out who can play football, and that's who I'm keeping." And that really, that was like, okay, good, because I'm not going to blow you away by the 40.
Right.
I'm not gonna blow you away on in individual things. A lot of them agility stuff I will, but I was like, okay, well, that's what I came here to do, show I could play football. And that one, then when I just focused on that, and that became my perspective,
Right.
um, then I knew I had a shot, just as long as I didn't make errors and I was prepared and I produced.
You was a football player. There's something you said, and a lot of time you do these interviews, you write your questions down, right? And you're gonna segue to a question I was gonna ask you later, but I'm gonna go ahead and ask you now because the way you answered that question. Is it safe to say, based on what you were telling me, as far as they won't allow you to make, two mental errors. Once you make that sack one, you're gone, right? Is it safe to say the players today need to look at the NFL quickly as a business and not, I'm still just playing a game? Like, yes, it's a game, but there's a business component and you need to learn it fast.
Yeah, I think that can kind of catch everybody off guard a little bit, and I don't care what conference you came from. Everybody
Right.
goes, oh, the SEC, it's like the NFL. I'm gonna tell you this: I've watched the SEC on tape for 20 some years. I've never seen anything that looks like the National Football League, especially from a defensive, offensive perspective.
Correct.
It looks nothing like it. Is SEC some talented players? There's no question. It is not the National Football League. It's not even close to the National Football League.
Gotcha.
So that being said, when you walk into that environment, it is truly a business, and it's about, I mentioned the word, you got to produce. I mean,
Right.
that it is being productive and it's being responsible, and understanding that some players miss that boat and it's too late.
Okay.
Some of them eventually, I think word gets out enough and they do enough. The NFL does enough, like like the rookie symposium, all the things
Sure.
that they do to prepare a player that we didn't have.
Hmm.
I gotta be honest with you. If you don't realize it's a business before you enter your first training camp,
Right.
then you probably got no shot to make it, because then nothing's going to get to you. Then you are completely naive to all the information that has been
Sure.
presented to you. And actually, that right there is a precursor to a team. If I've given you all this information, then you walk in and you still don't have the respect of the
Okay.
business it is.
You're
Okay, well,
going.
a red flag goes up right away.
Gotcha.
That's it's going to be difficult for me to keep you around, regardless of your athletic ability, if you don't approach it like that. Because at some point, here's what happens. Like in mini camp, or
Okay.
training camp, or preseason. This is what I always
Hmm.
say about. Here's what's delusional about preseason.
Okay.
Really, nobody has to win. In fact, coaches are evaluating.
Correct.
Like, a team can get killed. I'll watch a team that look terrible. I'm like, well, technically, I mean, when you're evaluating, you might not be looking that good, but the product they're going to put on the field could be different just based on their evaluations. So
Right.
at the end of the day, what they're evaluating a couple things: what you do as a player, what your strengths and weaknesses are,
Okay.
but ultimately, Otis, can I trust you? Can I
Okay.
trust you? Because if I can't trust you, that's me. I'm gone.
Right.
Like, if I can't trust you, but you're a phenomenal athlete, you do
Right.
incredible things, but you go inside those white lines and you don't do what we talked about, and you don't play within the structure, and you don't do your
Right.
job.
I'm
I don't care
going.
how great an athlete or football player you are, I can't put you on the field. And that's why I say that if you're not a really studious player, and that is not a strength of yours, and you think, well, I'm just going to go in there and make plays and I'm an athlete,
Right.
whatever your athletic ability is gets cut into half if you
Y-
don't have the mental aspect to it. Just because the NFL is so, people talk about it's a fast, quick, all true, but actually the biggest jump is the cerebral aspect of it. Just
Oh.
the strategy of it. I'm telling you, Otis, was the most mind blowing thing I'd ever experienced in all of football. And I came from a conference where we played pro style football.
Right.
We had empty. We had five wide receivers. I played in the slot. I played tailback. I played fullback. We threw it some 50 times a game. It was a different conference
Right.
than most in the 80s, the Big Sky. So I had that advantage. Well, now when you're in college, you see a couple coverages. Shoot, in the National Football League, I mean, in
You
3
see it
downs, I
all.
can see
I
something
was, I
different
was about to say in the same game,
every
you might
down.
see it all.
Yeah, and amazing athletes doing it. Grown men with their jobs on their hand on the line. That's their livelihood. It's a different environment when
When your
the
livelihood is on the
intensity.
line.
It is,
You s-
and if so, it's that's what really got my attention right off the bat. I was like, "Ooh, this is for real."
you said something that I didn't even have to ask you, and I didn't even have it as a question to ask you, but you said something that I asked Eric Davis that used to play for the 49ers.
Oh yeah,
And you when because I asked him, he said to me, he said, being a dumb jock, that's an oxymoron. The two don't go together. He said, when you're in the NFL, like in what you just talked about, the cerebral, being able to know how to study game film. He said the interception he made against the Cowboys. He said he and McDonald saw that play coming because of the game film. He said,
sure.
but then the trick is not the tip to the quarterback that I know what you're getting ready to do. I gotta bait you into doing what I know you can do, so and then execute and make a play on the ball. He said that's intelligence. And Herman Moore told me, he said, oh yeah, you can get in the league without being smart. He said, but you won't stay.
And he's right,
So
and
you
he's right.
said you said all those things just that quick.
That's right.
He said,
Yeah.
no, you won't stay. You get in, but you will not stay.
Yeah,
So and that
Herman's dead on. That's why I get to like you find out, people that really okay in college you can get away with that.
right.
That can get that that doesn't get exposed in
Mm,
college. It gets exposed in
Suppose
the
that is.
National Football League.
Wow. Um when who was the toughest, well, not the toughest, who was the running backs that you liked when you came in the league, like when you, because I know you played running back, fullback, you kind of did it all. So when you're on the sideline and you're watching, who did Merrill like to see play?
Well, I'm going to be. I'm going to cut right to a guy who indirectly
Hmm.
impacted my life, and then
Hmm.
directly impacted my life. Singly, the greatest player, pound for pound, to ever play in the National Football League
You can
was
only be
Walter
talking about
Payton.
what? Yeah, I was gonna say you could only be talking
Walter
about one guy.
Payton.
That was my guy.
And I'm telling you, and here's what made indirectly his impact on me. I was a kid,
Hmm.
and the Pittsburgh Steelers were my favorite team. Ironically, Walter Payton
Okay.
was my favorite player.
Okay.
I idolized Walter. I always have to use perspective. See, this is back in the late 70s, okay, and around
Okay.
77.
Okay.
So it's not what you don't have 150 channels and NFL
Right.
football access
No.
24/7. Okay,
No.
it comes on Monday night and maybe a game on Sunday. That's it. You don't
Right.
get anything during the week. So I remember as a kid, my goal was to play in the National Football League. A
Okay.
thing I've lived by is the words "find a way." Find a way has always inspired me to take action, do something about my circumstances,
Hmm.
and it sent me on a journey. I was like, well, when I wanted to play, the goal in my room. I will play in the National Football League. The words "find a way" pop into my head to take action. And what does that mean? Do something about my circumstances. So my first thought was
Okay.
like, who can help me do what I want to do? Who's really good at it and could give me some insight
Sure.
that I don't know at age 12, right? Okay.
Right.
So I start thinking about Walter Payton. Long story short, several years go by. I watch every interview he does. I watch every game. I listen. I read everything he says. And I'd heard about Walter's just different in the offseason. He runs this dirt hill. He
That
trains a
hill.
different ways.
Yes. Yes.
So I get this tape. It's called Winning in Life. It was a
Okay.
tape that he put out.
Okay.
Um, and he was putting that tape out for a variety of reasons. It was going to talk about his family, his charity, and how he trained. Okay,
Okay.
I'm age 15. I don't give a rat's rump about charity or
Right.
family. Okay,
Okay.
my focus is I'm playing in the National Football League. That's all I care about. That's all. And so I get the tape to say, what does he do that can help me that I can start doing?
Right.
And I'm scrolling through the stuff that doesn't interest me. I come up to an interview process.
Mm-hmm.
And Otis, he was asked, first question he was asked is, he's the all-time leading rusher at this time.
Okay.
He's asked, what makes you better than everybody else? That's the question.
Okay.
That's the first thing I would want to ask, because I want to know, what is it that makes him so, what is it that he does that separates him from the rest?
Sure.
I'm like, oh my gosh. So now I am anticipating this incredible, like, I'm here about nutrition. I'm here about training. I'm here. He pauses for a second. It's one of the most profound things I've ever heard a human being say it as he responded.
Okay.
He said, I want it more than they do. He said, every day of the week. He said, you see, in the off season on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, when nobody
Wow.
wants to run the dirt hill with me at 6 o'clock in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
he said, I want it more than they do. He said, during the season, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, when I'm practicing, getting ready for the game, and we don't have 65,000 fans in the stands and nobody's around to watch, I want it more than they do. He said, then at 1 o'clock, you better believe I want it more than they do. Well, Otis, I'm 15 years old. And the first thing that pops into my head, I can do that. Like that's something I can do. I can create that approach every day. I practice every day. I train every day. I play. And it became part of my life. It became how I prepared. And I solely believe that one principle, and then another one that I had learned from Aristotle, ironically, looking for Walter Payton information,
Mm-hmm.
were things as a young kid that helped me in a time we've all experienced being young kids. You can wander and you can do stupid things. It kept me on track, and it kept me focused, and it gave me a habit and a pattern that I still apply to this day. And that transformed me. Now I'm going to give you one other, because I think this one is maybe equally as important, maybe as significant, but it speaks to Walter Payton as a person.
Mm-hmm.
My rookie year, our second preseason game, and this, remember back in the day, when they had training camp, they cut players after every game.
Yep.
They even cut players during the week. I mean, people were coming and going all the time. They didn't wait till the end of the preseason and then cut everybody. Not like they do today. So my goal was, I'm going to make the second preseason game. We're playing in Chicago. My goal is not to really play in the game. I want to meet Walter Payton personally.
Right.
There's a long story to this particular moment, but I'm going to get right to the moment.
Okay.
The game is over.
Uh-huh.
We got beat 50-0. Walter Payton touched the ball one time. He actually fumbled his first carry. He doesn't play another down. He's all-time leading rusher. Why is he even playing, quite honestly?
Right.
So he fumbles. He doesn't play anymore. But at the end of the game, and I'd flown my dad in to video this, because I said he snuck a camera in. I'm like, at the end of the game, get the camera on me. I'll take you to Walter Payton, and you'll see everything you need to see. So at the conclusion of the game, everybody's seen a game. Everybody goes their separate ways.
Right.
There's chaos everywhere.
Okay.
Everybody has seen the losing locker room when you get beat 50-0, heads are down like this.
Yeah.
Winning locker room, they're not like that. There's a little more joy. Now it's preseason, so it's not quite like the Super Bowl. And Walter Payton's nowhere to be found. And I was like, I'm thinking, all-time leading rusher, second preseason game. He's probably in the locker room ready to go home. So Otis, I'm going to my locker, I'm changing, and I'm walking over into his locker room, because I'm not leaving this building without meeting Walter Payton.
Gotcha.
As I'm walking off the field, something said, I remember, look to your left. I looked to my left. He's walking all by himself at about the 50-yard line. He's about dead center on the C in Chicago.
Wow.
I went sprinting up to him. When I got to him,
Uh-huh.
I was taken back a little bit, because I'm 6'1".
Right.
Walter's 5'10". Now I have Walter Payton built up like,
he's a giant,
9 foot. So when I went to shake his hand, and I kind of towered over him, that took me by surprise, because my whole thought process was like, this dude destroys people, and he's 5'10", 205 pounds. But I stuck out my hand. I said, Mr. Payton, my name is Merril Hoge. I went through how I tried to run dirt hills like him, how the interview meant so much to me. I went through this whole litany of what I felt was important, right?
Right.
And then I didn't really have I didn't have a nice bow at the end to wrap it up. And I get a little flustered. I'm panicked a little bit. So I've never asked for one of these ever before or since.
Uh-huh.
I asked him if I could get an autograph. Okay. I
Okay.
just don't even know what else to ask. I think that's what you should do. Now, Otis, here's where he impacted my life forever again. He stops. He says, "Hey, Merril." He remembered my name.
Okay.
That blew me away that he'd remember my name. He said, "Merril, thank you for taking the time to come over here and tell me that. That's the nicest thing anybody's ever said to me." Now, Otis, I already have Walter Payton built up to be this guy.
Right.
Now he's like,
He's
I
even
mean,
bigger.
because he made me feel like $1 million. Listen, I'm irrelevant to his life, but what it taught me is how he treated me and how you treat people, you
Right.
know, regardless of the situation, but how respectful he was, how genuine he was, how kind he was. And then I walked away feeling better than I was trying to make him feel. I've never forgot that. And it's taught me every time somebody comes up and introduces themselves in a man like that, Walter Payton is the first thing I think of. That impact and what that did to me in my life. So, and then when I went there as a Chicago Bear, I got to know him even better.
Better.
There's, I got, well, here, okay.
You lived out two dreams.
I eventually get the autograph. I eventually get the autograph. I don't get it that day. Oh, and he instead of giving me an autograph, because it isn't like the TO days. You don't carry a pen with you after the game,
Right.
right? So he said, "Hey, listen." He goes, "Why don't you take these?" He takes these wristbands off and his headband, and he handed it to me, and elbow pads, and he said, "Why don't you take these?" Otis, I thought I won the Super Bowl. I thought I was the
Oh man.
MVP.
I know
And
you did.
yeah, and just so like when you can do that to people, that's just a powerful thing. What he did, it just always reminded me how he handled me. I try to make sure I handle people like that. And like if you can, it happened to me one other time, about 8 or 9 years left in my career. A guy
Uh-huh.
come up to me, this running back. We were in Arizona, and he come running up. It was almost the exact scenario as when I came running up to Walter Payton. And again, I was like, okay,
Right.
if I can make this guy feel as good as he made me feel, then he'll pass that on. I
Sure.
mean, and I guess Walter Payton is he's my all-time favorite.
Well,
He impacts me every day.
he's my favorite. And actually you did pass it on. You passed it on. I can't remember the year, so I can't remember the year, but you passed it on to me. I met you down at the Senior Bowl one year. I was into sports management at the time.
Okay.
And I had just signed my first client, Edric Pruitt, out of Southern Mississippi. Got
I'll be
drafted,
darned.
got drafted by the Atlanta Falcons, and he
Yeah.
was from Mobile, Alabama. Well, Theodore, Alabama. I always tease him like, man, that's in Mobile. And my wife and I were down at the Senior Bowl, and they had a buffet, and I didn't want anybody to know who I was, right? So I had on a Terrell Owens jersey.
Oh, really?
And you and I were at the buffet at the same time. And we got to talking, and you said, what do you not here for? What do you do? And I said, I'm a brand man, a marketing manager. I handle marketing endorsement for athletes. And you said, oh, okay. And you said, is T.O. your client? I said, no, T.O.'s not my client. I said, I had to come down here. I just didn't want anybody to know. And we kind of just laughed a little bit about how sensitive T.O. can be. And
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
yeah, and you especially at that time. And
yeah.
it was interesting that we just had a conversation, and you actually spoke to me, and so I always remembered that. And I just can't remember what year it was. I can't remember what
Otis,
year it
that's
was.
all right, man.
And,
You made my
and,
day, brother. That's
and
nice to be
so
able to
so
pass it
that's why
on.
I kept plugging. I said, no, I got out the sports management business, started a podcast. I said, I got to have Merril on here. So
Man, I'm
uh,
honored, Otis.
so I appreciate you doing that for me. What was it for you? What was that like in that time, in the era that you played in? What was the NFL like?
Well, listen, it was as far as getting prepared for Sundays. I mean, it's a much different environment then than it is now. I mean, we actually on Fridays we had short yardage and goal line live. We had 3 plays of each on a
Hmm.
Friday. I mean, we
Okay.
lined up and it was live. I mean, offense against defense on a Friday. Like you would never have that. We had real physical practices when we had our inside drill run. It was live.
Right.
So and I even back then, I always thought, because the 49ers, remember, they kind of did it differently. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, the 49ers tried to trade for me, and when I was a free agency, I almost signed there. And what they did is they would have some live contact in their 7-on-7 drill, but then they'd take their pads off, and the rest of it was non-contact, where we were just going contact all the time. But my thought was like, you can learn how to play the game without beating each other up during the week. You save
Right.
that for Sunday. And
Okay.
even back then, I used to think like that. I was like, do you really have to, like, because we'd be so exhausted on Friday. We were grateful we had time off on Saturday so we could play on Sunday.
Got the
Um,
rest.
but listen, everything is better as it should be. And
Mm-hmm.
see, players get angry that they don't
Mm-hmm.
have something back in the 70s, 80s, or 90s that they have
Sure.
today. But I go, that's ultimately life. I mean, that'd be like you having a pilgrim on here and him being angry because there's no planes, trains, and automobiles, and they come across the
Right.
prairie. I mean, people are like, well, that wasn't around. I mean,
Right.
you're wasting your energy on things. What I think, what I'm excited for is like, it's so much better when you think about protocols for head trauma. Equipment is how they care for their bodies, the nutritional aspect of
Right.
how to care, the training aspect, how precise it is. I mean, that's an awesome thing to have. That thing has evolved from us doing all the things that we did to help the game get better. So it's a completely better league, and any player who played back in the day would love to play in today's
Especially with the money.
environment. Well, sure. And listen, go back to Walter Payton. Walter Payton was the highest paid player in the National Football League when he retired at $1 million a year. $1 million a year. That's what Walter Payton was
Ooh.
getting. I went to the Bears some 10 years later as a free agent because I was part of free agency. I
Right.
called myself a bridge player. I came in with the old, but I went out with the new.
New. Right.
I got $1 million a year, a 4-year deal, $1 million signing bonus to go to Chicago. Okay, now I start thinking, okay, this is in '94. That's how much improvement from '87 to about '94 had
94.
happened. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
the second year of free agency, and I start thinking about Walter Payton because I'm like, if I'm worth $1 million, Walter's worth 10 back then.
Right. Back then. Yeah.
Now, shoot, now Walter's probably a
He'd
$20
be the
million
highest
dollar
paid.
back.
Yeah. Yeah. He'd be the highest
Yeah, all
paid. Yeah.
day, all
Yeah.
day. But I mean, it wasn't like that. Now he was the highest paid player back then.
Correct.
That's a big number back in 86,
Oh, of
87.
course. Yeah.
That's a staggering number to be
Especially
like that.
especially a year, considering sometimes it took 3 or 4 years to get that at that time. Yeah.
Right. And so,
Yeah.
so I go back to like players get caught up in loss and being angry and frustrated. I'm like, well, that's just listen, you help build the game to where it
Right.
is today. It would be, yeah, sure, it would be nice to have that, but it didn't. But look what we've done to create the stage for the new players, and that's why I think sometimes with the rookie symposium, I think they started to do a better job. But I, I don't remember understanding the players behind you that have, especially when there's been game
Right.
changers or players.
Sure.
I was talking to some DBs one time in Pittsburgh, and they didn't know who Mel Blount was. I said, "What? How do you
You
not
how,
know?
first of all,
You're
right.
Pittsburgh Steelers.
Steelers.
Even if you're never if you're not a Steeler fan, the second you get drafted, you might want to look a little bit of history because that dude right there changed the game. That guy changed the game. I mean, because of the way he played, we have after 5 yards, you can't touch somebody because he made wide receivers irrelevant. Okay,
Uh,
yeah, that cat is special, and not just a great football player, but that's a great human being. I mean, but to know people and what they did for you and having that, I just think having that respect for the
I
game,
think.
and if you learned about it, I think you
Yeah.
would have a better sensitive towards an appreciation for what you have now as current players.
I think that I do believe that's what is missing, far as the younger generation knowing what came before them, and not just. I always say your generational players are the players that this generation need to really dive in and pick their brains. Like I remember when Ezekiel Elliott came into the league, and I remember previous running back saying, "Hey, you need to run out of bounds. You got to stop taking on every single guy, on every game. You got to run because you can save yourself and you can last longer." But that became because of what they went through, how they was taken on every tackler, every runner, and realized that they burnt their careers out earlier had they saved themselves and stepped out of bounds. So I wish the younger generation would. I even told Jaws, I said, every rookie quarterback to me needs to come in and sit down with you and watch film. you know, because
Completely agree.
I think a lot of guys, they don't know what they're looking at when they get the game film. They don't know how to they can't study because they don't know what they're looking at.
Very true.
And even at your
Very true.
position, at the running back position, and it's funny because we call it the running back position, but you guys like yourself, Gerald Riggs, William Andrews, guys like you guys played fullback, running back, caught out the backfield. Like there wasn't no such thing as a third down back.
Right. Well, right. Well, because you see, I was our third down back. Like I played my first 5 years. I got a part of my incentives was
Mm-hmm.
playing 90% of the snaps. Okay. Do you know how rare it is to play
Play
90% of
90% of
snaps? Right.
snaps.
I played I played 100% of the snaps a few years in a row because I was our third down back. I played every down. I never left the field. And that was actually the thing that gave me advantage because a third down back, I think people think of it as a matchup guy, and he can't.
Right.
That is some of it. But that guy, ultimately, if he's going to be a complete weapon, if he's going to be dangerous, it's
Mm-hmm.
not that he can run routes and win.
Mm-hmm.
It's that he can block as well. And he
Correct.
knows the coverages and the pressures as good as his offensive line and his quarterback, not because to block the right guy, but to make up for a mistake that might happen with offensive line up front because they
Alignments.
got trash in their face all day.
Correct.
They can make a mistake, and you got to be able to adjust to that. I mean, having that knowledge and understanding of those instincts makes you invaluable. That's how I made the roster because I could do those type of things. I could pick things up, even though it wasn't my guy. If they picked him up, I'd go get their guy and I'd offset mistakes that were
And it
happening.
keeps from giving away tendencies.
Oh
Like
yeah,
now,
and you,
it's like this guy come in, so 9 times 10 we think they're gonna pass because you done took quote unquote the running back out, and this
you're right.
guy, and that's what I meant. Like you said, being an every down back.
Yep.
You
Uh,
you were at one point, you had got diagnosed with cancer, and to
yeah.
see you now and to see like the hat and the book behind you find a way, you know how did you get through that whole process of going through that and coming out on the other side?
Well, Otis, I will tell you. I mean, it's initially nobody's prepared or
Sure.
equipped when you hear you have cancer.
Hmm.
I don't know of anybody that your mind doesn't go to chemotherapy and dying.
Right.
Just tragic.
Right.
And that's why I call it the dark days of diagnosis because it isn't just the first day; it's just like a series of days that get worse. But it's very similar to kind of what happened to me at age 12 when I got inspired by those words to let's not focus on chemotherapy and dying. Let's focus on how we can beat it, what we're up against, and who can help me
Okay.
do it. Very similar to living a dream with Walter Payton. What can I do to take action on this circumstance? Even though that was an arduous mental transition,
Hmm.
once I got there, then I reversed this whole diagnosis versus doom and gloom. I started to do things. First of all, we found it relatively early. I was in great health. Those two things are huge advantage for any
Sure.
human being at any given time. So I had those going for me. Even though the treatment was about a 60-40 ratio, they had added a new particular targeted treatment that was going to be used that if worked well could give up to an 80%. So
Okay.
even though that wasn't a guarantee and my doctor said this is no guarantee, all of those things mounted up for me as more positive than negative. And that focus every day, getting up with that every day, on my goal board, I
Hmm.
put, I will destroy non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. That was my ultimate focus. And yes, I have some bad days. I have moments where I was, and I thought they're gonna have to take me to the hospital. I
Sure.
had burn holes. I mean, yeah, but there was very few of those days. Majority of them, I won. Very few to cancel in. And at the end of the day, um, I ended up getting being able to defeat it in the sense because of a bunch of things. One, the mindset,
Right.
the way I approached it every day, the improved treatments that exist today, the health I had going into it, which was critical. And those three things really helped that process. And it was a lot of things I learned inside the white lines of a football field. That's why I do a lot of motivational speaking, is that
Sure.
I'm able to share with people things that I have lived and I know are possible. And I'm possible for you, people who listen this, watch this, because I'm a product of so many people. Walter Payton gave me hope, and it gave me a tool that I never
Sure.
thought about using. And that's what I try to share with people, ways they can take their tools and apply them and make them stronger to their circumstances. And um, I'm grateful for that battle because it's put me through something that I can talk about versus say, hey, I heard this, I lived it. And so I can
Gotcha.
share with people what is truly possible within their own selves, with their mind and their spirit, if applied right.
I appreciate that, man. It was when I heard about it and saw you came out on the other side and you kept working and everything. Trust me, it was an inspiration to me because what more can I do? I always look at when somebody's going through something that you're not going through, and you have this thing in your head that what you're going through is, so big and traumatic, and somebody's really going through something. It lets you know, look, stop whining, stop crying about this little thing that you face, and look at he's really got a battle. And so that lets you know, come on, get up and keep going with your life and try to be inspiring, just like somebody inspires you. My final question for you is this: who was Merril Hoge at 21? And who is Merril Hoge today?
Oh, Otis, that's a well, I can tell you this: at 21, I was green, young, and dumb, but I was I was a willing participant to learn. At
Gotcha.
21, I 21, I get drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers. I walk into the city of Pittsburgh, and I was overwhelmed because I came from Pocatello, Idaho, population 55,000 at the time. So
Okay.
I went from kind of one light town that
Mm-hmm.
I cowboyed. I worked on farms to a city, and now I look at that city and many cities because with ESPN, it took me to
Sure.
Philadelphia,
Mm-hmm.
22 years, New Jersey, New York, all that again that I've learned from so many people. You mentioned you've had Jaws on here. Okay, I can't
Right.
even tell you what an inspiration that guy's been in my life. When I got to ESPN, I remember after my first show I ever did with him, I
Mm-hmm.
got off the set. And I'm like, okay, I can never, ever come to work and sit on the set with him and not be prepared.
Oh
I
no,
better
no.
never do it. I
Yeah.
better never do it. And then, so he set a standard. He's a dear, dear, dear friend, but I'm product of just so many people again. And
Sure.
that continues to happen every day. I feel like I'm clearly wiser. And I'm not as green, but doesn't mean I don't have a lot to learn still. I mean, I'm
We
still
all
through
do.
going
Yeah.
through the learning
Yeah.
process, but I'm grateful for the experiences because, it's kind of like going back to the Walter Payton thing. How can you, pass it on to younger people and
Sure.
help them and help people, inspire people and give them, some a wider open up their scope a little bit based on
Sure.
where it is, and be impactful to them. So that's where I'm a lot different now than, some 30 years ago at 21.
Well, I appreciate you blessing us with your presence. We don't take it lightly. I thank you for coming on. I've watched you play. I've watched the era that you were in. My cousin Greg, he's also a big Pittsburgh Steelers fan, so he's gonna get a kick out of this one.
Well, I
Uh,
appreciate it,
I've been
Otis. Well,
trying.
I'm
I've
glad
been
you
trying
had
to
me.
get it still on.
Well, I feel
But
honored, brother. I feel honored. I'm one of
but
them.
but I tell you, Merrill, the reason I thank you because my show, I have people on here that I just always wanted to talk to. Like it's not complicated. It's just that simple. It's just people I've always wanted to talk to, and since I started the podcast, I've been blessed to be able to interview great people like yourself. So continue to stay blessed and stay safe out there. We'd love to have you back on again. Probably pair you up with somebody else play, somewhere in the same era or something, talk a little bit more football. But I just wanted to share your story, your journey with people, and understand, like your book and your hat says, that we all can find a way.
Well, Otis, I appreciate it. It was an honor to be on your show, and you're doing a great job because guess what? People love listening to somebody who's genuine and just wants to talk and listen. That goes a long way. So keep it up, brother. I'll come back anytime you need me.
Thank you.
See you, brother.
All right. Peace.
Thanks, Otis.